Emma Clark laced up her running shoes like she had 100 times before, calm, focused, unaware that someone was already waiting for her in the woods. She was a nursing student with a bright future, a tight routine, and no known enemies. But just hours after stepping onto her favorite trail, she was found dead, hidden beneath leaves, her phone gone, and a silent predator vanished without a trace. This is the chilling story of a quiet town, a calculated killer, and the question that haunted everyone. Who killed the nursing student on the trail? Emma Clark was the kind of person everyone noticed for the right reasons. At 22, she was known for her quiet determination, gentle heart, and unwavering focus. Her days were packed with clinical rotations, late-night study sessions, and early morning jogs. She was in her final semester of nursing school at Silver Pines University. Just a few weeks from graduation, she had already accepted a job offer at the town's hospital, a dream position she had worked toward for years. Her professors admired her, her classmates respected her, and her family was immensely proud. Life seemed to be unfolding exactly the way she had planned. Emma lived just off campus with her roommate Hannah, in a small but cozy apartment filled with textbooks, succulents, and photos taped to the fridge. She had a simple routine: study, work, run, repeat. On the morning of October 14th, a Saturday, she woke up around 7:30 a.m., made a smoothie, and told Hannah she was heading to Maple Ridge Trail for a run. It was her favorite place in town, quiet, green, and tucked away from the rush of college life. She said she'd be back before noon to help Hannah prepare for a small get-together they had planned that evening. The sun was just beginning to filter through the trees as Emma arrived at the trail. She parked her car in the gravel lot, tied her hair into a ponytail, and started her usual 3-mile loop. She always ran with her smartwatch, tracking her pace and heart rate, but left her earbuds out. Emma liked to hear the world around her, the birds, the breeze, her own breath. It helped her focus. It calmed her. By 11:30 a.m., she still hadn't returned. At first, Hannah wasn't concerned. Emma was known to lose track of time, especially on a nice day. But by 1 p.m., worry began to creep in. Calls to Emma's phone went straight to voicemail. Texts were left unread. By 3, Hannah drove to the trailhead. Emma's car was still there, parked in the same spot. The driver's seat was empty, and her gym bag was still in the back. Hannah called the police. By sunset, a formal search had begun. Police officers, park rangers, volunteers, and search dogs scoured the area. Flashlights swept across the underbrush. Names were called out into the darkening woods. A chopper circled overhead. It wasn't until just after sunrise the next day that they found her. Emma's body was discovered about 15 feet off the trail, in a shallow ditch partially covered with leaves and branches. Her clothes were intact. Her watch was still on her wrist, but her phone and wallet were missing. There were no signs of a struggle on the path itself, leading investigators to believe she had been lured or forced off the main trail. The coroner later confirmed the cause of death as manual strangulation. News of her death spread fast. Silver Pines wasn't the kind of town where this happened. The local paper called her the heart of the nursing school. Vigils were held on campus and at the hospital where she had trained. Professors cried openly. Her parents, devastated, flew in from Oregon and pleaded for answers. The town went from peaceful to paranoid almost overnight. Runners avoided the trails. Women walked in groups. Parents stopped letting their kids play in the park near the woods. No arrests were made in the first days following the discovery. There were no suspects, no witnesses, and no known enemies. What happened to Emma didn't make sense to anyone who knew her. She had no history of risky behavior, no known threats, and nothing in her past that pointed to danger. That morning, she had been just another young woman going for a run in a town that always felt safe. And then, just like that, she was gone. The investigation into Emma Clark's murder began immediately, but it didn't take long for detectives to realize they were working with almost nothing. There were no eyewitnesses, no surveillance footage, and no clear motive. Maple Ridge Trail had always been seen as a safe space. It had no history of violent crime, and its entrances were bordered by residential neighborhoods and a few scattered businesses. The only camera positioned at the main parking lot entrance had been broken for over a month, something the city hadn't yet gotten around to fixing. Without visual evidence, police were left to rely on interviews, digital forensics, and tips from the public. Emma's personal life was the logical place to start. Investigators spoke to her professors, classmates, co-workers, and friends. Everyone described her the same way: responsible, focused, and kind. But like most young adults, Emma had her share of complicated relationships, and one name kept coming up: Jake Mercer. He was her ex-boyfriend, a student from a nearby technical school who had dated Emma for almost a year before they broke up just 4 months before her death. Friends said things had ended on tense terms. Jake had struggled with the breakup, and some recalled him showing up unexpectedly at places where Emma would be: the library, the cafe near campus, even her apartment once. He had never done anything overtly threatening, but it was enough to catch the investigators' attention. Jake was brought in for questioning 2 days after Emma's body was discovered. He admitted that the breakup had hit him hard, but he denied any involvement in her death. He claimed he had been working at his uncle's auto shop all morning on October 14th, from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m., and said there were at least 3 people who could confirm that. Detectives verified his alibi. Surveillance footage from the shop showed Jake working on cars throughout the day, and the shop's time card system matched his hours. With no physical evidence tying him to the scene, Jake was ruled out. The next person of interest wasn't someone Emma had dated, but someone she had competed with. Mia Delgado, another nursing student in Emma's graduating class, had a tense relationship with her. According to classmates, they had both applied for the same internship program at the hospital. Emma got it. Mia didn't. Some said Mia had taken it personally, and a few even suggested that she had been openly resentful in recent weeks. Investigators spoke with Mia, who seemed genuinely shaken by Emma's death. She told police she had been visiting her parents in North Haven, a small town 2 hours away, that entire weekend. Her alibi was confirmed through toll records, cell phone data, and her parents' statements. She was cleared within 48 hours. Just as the case was beginning to stall, a woman named Karen Mitchell came forward with a story that gave investigators a new angle. She lived in a neighboring town and frequently walked her dog on Maple Ridge Trail. 3 weeks before Emma's murder, she said, she'd been followed by a man in a gray hoodie. She noticed him about a mile into her walk. He wasn't running or walking a dog, he was just there behind her, staying close. She said she stopped to tie her shoe, hoping he'd pass, but he stopped too. When she turned around and stared at him, he quickly walked off the path and disappeared into the trees. At the time, she'd told herself she was being paranoid, but after hearing about Emma, she realized it might have been something more. Her report sparked interest from detectives. If there was a man who had been watching women on the trail, possibly waiting for the right moment, it could explain how Emma had been taken without anyone hearing a thing. Karen's description was vague but consistent. Around 6 feet tall, average build, gray hoodie, jeans, and dark shoes. She hadn't seen his face clearly, but she remembered how quiet his footsteps were and how deliberate his pace had seemed. Police issued a public request for information. Anyone who had been on the trail around the time of the murder, or in the weeks leading up to it, was asked to come forward. Several more people reported seeing a man matching the vague description: always alone, never speaking, never running. No one had a name, no one had a photo, but a pattern was starting to emerge, one that pointed to something far more disturbing than a random act of violence. As investigators pieced together witness statements and mapped out the days leading up to Emma's murder, the figure of the man in the gray hoodie began to take shape, not as a single event but as a recurring presence. More than a dozen tips had come in from local hikers, runners, and dog walkers. The sightings varied in location and time, but nearly all shared one detail: a man loitering near Maple Ridge Trail, often standing still just off the path, always wearing a gray hoodie. No one could describe his face. He seemed to avoid eye contact, disappearing into the woods before anyone could get a good look at him. Detectives returned to the crime scene for another sweep. They walked the trail again, this time combing deeper into the tree line. About 50 yards from where Emma's body had been found behind a moss-covered tree stump, a search team discovered a damp, crumpled hoodie wedged between two logs. It matched the description given by witnesses: a plain, zip-up gray sweatshirt. It had no visible stains or tears, but it smelled faintly of sweat and earth. The item was bagged and sent to the crime lab. Forensic technicians examined the hoodie for DNA. The outer fabric was mostly degraded by rain and humidity, but inside the collar they found faint traces of skin cells. It was enough to build a partial DNA profile. Excitement built quickly within the task force. If the DNA matched someone in the system, they could finally have their suspect. But when the results came back, the profile was not in any criminal database. The man in the gray hoodie had no known record. No arrests, no charges, at least not under his real name. The lead was solid, but without a name or face, it wasn't enough to make an arrest. Still, the discovery confirmed one thing: Emma's killer had been at the trail before. The hoodie hadn't been dropped in panic. It had been hidden. That meant planning. This wasn't random. It was calculated. Public anxiety grew as word of the discovery leaked. The local paper ran a front-page headline: "Hoodie clue found near murder scene. Is a serial predator stalking Maple Ridge?" Fear spread quickly. Trail usage dropped overnight. Runners formed safety groups. Pepper spray sold out at every store in town. Police increased their presence at the trail, but there was no sign of the man. Then a break came from an unexpected place. 3 weeks after Emma's death, a woman named Jessica Raymond contacted police. She hadn't seen the news coverage. She had just returned from a hiking trip in the mountains. While cleaning out her backpack, she remembered something odd. During a run near Maple Ridge a few days before the murder, she had found a cracked smartphone in the brush beside the trail. It looked like it had been thrown or dropped in a hurry. She didn't think much of it, and assuming it was trash, tossed it in a public bin near the parking lot. When she saw the reports about Emma's missing phone, it clicked. Police scrambled to locate the garbage container. By then, its contents had already been collected and taken to the town's central waste facility. With Jessica's help, they narrowed the search window to a specific collection route. A team of officers and sanitation workers sorted through several tons of waste before they found it. A black phone with a cracked screen, waterlogged and covered in dirt. Forensic experts got to work drying it out and extracting data. It was confirmed to be Emma Clark's phone. Despite the damage, they recovered fragments of her activity from that morning. Steps, GPS coordinates, heart rate logs. But there was more. Her fitness app had automatically uploaded a set of photos to cloud storage. Investigators hadn't expected any pictures, but there they were. A series of blurry, shaky images captured during her run. Most were useless, but two stood out. In one photo, just barely in frame, was the outline of a person. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a gray hoodie. The second photo, taken seconds later, showed him again, closer this time. Still no face, but this time there was a logo on the chest of the hoodie. A green tree inside a circle with letters underneath. It wasn't much, but it was something solid at last. The logo belonged to a local landscaping company. Emma's killer had just made his first real mistake. Detectives zeroed in on the logo found in the blurry photo from Emma's phone. After enhancing the image and comparing it with local businesses, they identified it as belonging to Evergreen Earthworks, a landscaping company based just outside Silver Pines. It was a small operation with a dozen employees, most of whom worked part-time or seasonally. Police quickly obtained a list of current and former workers. Narrowing the field to 6 men who matched the general build of the suspect, and were scheduled to work the day Emma was killed. 5 of them were quickly ruled out. Alibis were confirmed, time cards matched GPS data from work trucks, and none had any history of violence. The 6th name on the list, however, raised immediate red flags. Lucas Grady, a 34-year-old seasonal employee who had been hired in August and abruptly quit 2 days after Emma's murder. No notice, no explanation. He simply stopped showing up and ignored the company's calls. Detectives began digging into his background. Lucas had no serious criminal record, just a few petty theft charges and a trespassing violation from a few years earlier. But what stood out most was how little there was to find. No family in the area, no fixed address, no social media presence, no credit cards. He'd been paid in checks, all cashed immediately at local liquor stores. He was invisible in the digital world, but that also meant he left fewer footprints. Exactly the kind of person who could disappear after committing a crime. The search intensified. Police traced Lucas's last known address to a rundown rental on the edge of town. He hadn't lived there in weeks. A neighbor said she'd seen him loading things into a van late at night and driving off. She didn't know where he went. The license plate, when reviewed on traffic cameras, hadn't been picked up anywhere in the city since. For days the trail went cold again, until a lucky break came from a gas station outside of town. A clerk called in after seeing the sketch released to the public alongside the image of the Evergreen Earthworks logo. He said a man matching the description had stopped in to buy snacks and gas. He was in an old landscaping van with duct tape over the side panel, covering the logo. Security footage confirmed it was Lucas Grady. Police tracked the van's route using traffic and toll cameras, eventually locating it at a remote truck stop about 40 miles from Silver Pines. They approached cautiously. The van was parked behind a large dumpster, partially hidden from view. Inside, Lucas was sleeping. He was arrested without incident. Inside the van, officers found disturbing items: gloves, zip ties, rope, and a burner phone with no contacts or call history. The gray hoodie was tucked under the passenger seat. Forensic testing would later confirm that DNA found on the hoodie matched the partial profile pulled from the one left behind at the scene. But perhaps the most damning evidence came from Emma's phone, which had stored more than just photos. The GPS data, when cross-referenced with data from the burner phone found in Lucas's van, showed a terrifying overlap. The phones had been in the same location at the same time, at Maple Ridge Trail on the morning of October 14th. Still, Lucas said nothing. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't deny the charges. He simply stared at the wall during questioning, expressionless and silent. Investigators believed he had stalked Emma for at least a week, possibly longer, studying her patterns, waiting for a moment when she'd be alone. With the evidence stacked against him, the district attorney filed formal charges: first-degree murder, unlawful disposal of a body, and obstruction of justice. Lucas Grady was held without bail. The arrest offered relief to a grieving town. People returned to the trails cautiously. Runners still looked over their shoulders. Parents still clutched their children's hands more tightly. And though the suspect was behind bars, the sense of innocence Silver Pines once had was gone for good. The case was no longer about solving a murder. It was about understanding how a predator could live unnoticed in a peaceful place, and how easily one life, so full of promise, could be taken away. In the weeks that followed Lucas Grady's arrest, the town of Silver Pines watched the investigation unfold with cautious hope. For many, the sight of him being led into the courthouse in handcuffs brought a sense of closure, but for Emma Clark's family, it was only the beginning of another painful chapter. While the evidence seemed overwhelming, the trial still had to be won, and the prosecution knew that building a solid, airtight case would be crucial. Prosecutors worked methodically, compiling every thread of evidence. The DNA from the hoodie matched Lucas. The burner phone found in his van pinged off the same towers as Emma's phone at the time of her disappearance. Soil from his boots matched the terrain near the hidden ditch where her body was found. And perhaps most chilling of all, digital forensics revealed that Lucas had visited the trail multiple times in the weeks before Emma's death, as well as searched online for secluded hiking spots near Silver Pines and how to delete GPS data from a phone. Even so, Lucas refused to speak. He didn't confess, didn't defend himself, and showed no emotion during his court hearings. His silence only added to the fear that there might be more victims, more secrets buried in the quiet corners of town. Police began combing through unsolved cases across the state, looking for patterns or links. Nothing was confirmed, but the possibility that Emma hadn't been his first target hung heavily in the air. During the trial, Emma's parents sat in the front row each day, faces pale but composed. Her mother clutched a folded photo of Emma in her nursing scrubs taken just a week before her death. The courtroom was quiet as prosecutors laid out the timeline. Emma leaving her apartment, jogging the trail, the sudden spike in heart rate recorded on her smartwatch, followed by stillness. Then the recovered images, the blurred figure, the logo, the hoodie, the van. Each piece painted a devastating picture, one that left little room for doubt. The defense attempted to argue that the evidence was circumstantial. No one had seen Lucas with Emma. There was no video of the crime. But the jury didn't need a video. They had her phone. They had his DNA. And they had a timeline so precise that it left almost no alternative explanation. After only 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict. Guilty on all counts. Lucas Grady was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. There was no outburst, no statement, just the sound of the judge's gavel and the collective exhale of a community that had waited too long for justice. In the months after the trial, a memorial bench was placed near the entrance of Maple Ridge Trail. It bore Emma's name along with a small plaque that read, "In memory of a healer whose light was stolen too soon." Her classmates graduated without her, but her name was called at the ceremony, and her parents accepted her nursing degree in her honor. The hospital created a scholarship in her name, awarded each year to a student who shows the same compassion and dedication Emma was known for. But the town didn't forget, and it didn't fully heal. People walked the trails again, but they walked differently, more aware, more cautious. Silver Pines had always been a place where people left their doors unlocked and waved to strangers. That sense of easy trust was gone now, replaced by a quiet vigilance that lingered like a shadow. Emma Clark became more than a victim. She became a symbol of what was lost and what needed to be protected. Her story was told in classrooms, community meetings, and across the internet. Not just as a cautionary tale, but as a reminder that even in the safest of places, darkness can wait in silence just beyond the path. And sometimes, the most dangerous predators wear ordinary clothes and go unnoticed until it's too late.